Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining, spitting and chatting. Elaine, how you doing today?
I'm good, man. Ready to get into this. I've been excited all
Yeah,
week.
man.
Couldn't wait.
Yeah. It's been a good week. I know work has been a little rough, so I always like kind of just chatting it up. So it's
Yep,
good to talk at the end of the week.
absolutely, man. Let's
Hey,
get
man.
into
So
this.
let's just dive into it. This is we always have some great topics, but this one is called "He Needs Support." Now, there is no greater support than a man's woman.
Hmm.
And I'm sure that everyone's heard the Adam and Eve story. Lane, you heard of that before?
Yeah, plenty of time.
Hey, I don't care if you're religious or not. Everyone has at least heard that story. And think about it. The woman is the greatest gift of support to man. I mean, in every area of us being able to work together, accomplish goals together, our friendship, you know what I mean, our children, creating a legacy, building a legacy, the person that we're supposed to literally build our lives with as a team, right?
Yep.
But what happens when that support is the exact opposite? And now it turns into a competition
Mm.
or strife or, at the end of the day, a thorn in your
Right.
flesh. So that's the topic we're about to get in tonight. So I hope you all strapped up, buckled up, because we're about to start rolling. So,
Yep.
Lane, you ready?
Let's go. Let's go.
All right. All right. So most of y'all have probably, especially in our community, heard of Steve Harvey's show. You heard of that, Lane?
Yeah, yeah.
All right. So they got a little segment with Miss Shirley, who has a strawberry letter. Well, we ain't got that. We got something a little different.
Break it
Now,
out.
we received some information. We've been collecting kind of thoughts and issues from friends, family, and just our inner circle. And we just really want to
Yep.
open this up to men. And the segment is called "We Can't Make This Up." So as
Mm.
you can see, I got a trash can right here, and I read something earlier. I'm about to pull out this trash.
Man, let's get to it.
Let me
Woo, that's
read
a
this.
fresh one.
Let me read this to you. Now, this says, "What's up, spitting and chatting? Man, I appreciate y'all giving us men an avenue to express ourselves through your podcast. I want to share something I have been experiencing in my relationship that has been bothering me for years. I hope y'all listening up. When me and my girl met, we both had kids from previous relationships. I really didn't think much about it as everything seemed to be fine as we both were co-parenting with our exes. We eventually moved in together, and I accepted her son as my own. I love him like my other two boys and did not treat him any differently. However, my girl started treating my boys like they were outsiders. She didn't really want them to visit us for longer than a day or two. She didn't want me to give my sons any more money than what was required by the child support order. It just seems like she is not supportive of my kids, and they are a burden to her, but I have embraced hers as my own. Just wanted to get this out. Not sure if other men are experiencing this, but this makes me constantly second guess her love for me and my kids. It's a dang shame."
And put that right back in there. Right
Right
back
back
in
in the
there.
trash. Lane, what's your
Damn.
what's your thoughts? What's
Man, wow. That's heartbreaking.
is
When you have a blended family, it's tough, but both parties have to be on the same page with issues like discipline, finances, family outings. You got to be on the same page. You got to be a team, you and your significant other, and then the kids. Um,
yeah.
it's tough building relationships with the kids when you're in a blended family, but you have to make the effort. You made the decision to get into this relationship, so you got to make the effort. And I think just spending time with your significant other's child or children in her situation would do her some good. She don't need, nobody else around her, the guy or whatever, just by herself to get a good relationship with the kids. But going into that situation, it sounds bad. And it's just gonna get worse. Man, we need to sit in the seals to help this dude, man. I don't know. I'm worried about him.
Yeah, and as you know, we continue to hear like different scenarios like that, and that's kind of why we're bringing this up. Like
Mm,
support is something that we don't really talk about, as men, at large. You know what I mean? A lot of times we constantly hear about what our women need,
yeah.
right? But where is that support, for the fellas? For
Mm,
one, we got to learn how to just chat and talk with each other,
yep.
be honest with each other, right? But when we talk about support, I mean, we're talking about from the greatest gift that God has created, our
Yeah.
women. So it's that much more important. I do, as most of you know, I do like research. So I am
Got
bringing
the
up some
paperwork.
stuff again from a very reputable place, Psychology Today, just for educational purposes. But this particular article says how men perceive supportive partners. And it talks about how we perceive partners through compassionate and judgment free listening. Some men struggle to communicate stress to their significant others, and perception of support is linked with enhanced levels of relationship satisfaction and better health outcomes. So, if you think about it by design, we think when we go into like a relationship as men, we're looking at like, man, this is going to better my life.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Absolutely.
I'm gonna be in a much better situation. I ain't gotta be stressing trying to chase no lady. You know what I mean? I have everything that I need
Yeah.
in my home, right? Or with my
Yeah.
woman. But when that gets flipped around like that, this particular article goes into it talks about it's almost like it creates a self threat. So
Mm.
men become less motivated to communicate with their partners and may perceive a lack of partner support when it becomes more stressful than supported.
Right. And man, just as you said, that goes along what we were talking about, like mental health. Like if you can't
Hmm.
communicate with her, like you just start bottling things up.
Yeah.
And like you said, you got your lady, your prize, you feel like you ain't gotta look elsewhere or anything. You got your home base you can come to if you got a problem. And like you
Hmm.
said, like it affects your overall health, and
Yeah.
you start stressing about things and worrying and everything like that. And why are you competing with her? Like, how
Mm.
does that make sense? How are you competing with your significant other? There should be no competition.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
should have your back and you should have hers. And
Yeah.
that's different for both male and female, but definitely that needs to be your priority. That's your home base, your captain, your partner, and
Yeah.
you need to rely on them. But if you can't, man, that's a blow, especially for men.
Yeah, yeah. And man, you said a good or really like an alarming kind of word when you said like competition. Like,
Yeah.
like where do you think that that's come from? Like why is there so much competition just in our own relationships these days?
I don't know. That's a good question. That's something to look into, but it's something that people should start taking notice. If they find themselves competing with their significant other, I don't care if it's your wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, whatever. If you find yourself trying to compete with them, like something you need to check yourself. But this kind of stuff affects us men, and things affect us differently than it affects women. I was looking at something myself when we were going over the notes for this and knowing how sometimes relationships can cause mental health issues. I looked at suicide rates and it
Mm.
was saying that the suicide rate for men is 4 times more than women. And how do we get there? Like, how does that happen? And these aren't all guys who are by themselves. These are guys with partners and stuff like that. But the stress from life and sometimes their relationship can take them
Mhm.
down like a dark alley.
And that's pretty alarming,
Yeah, yeah,
because this is the closest relationship to us, yet at times and within our circle and just friends and people I talk to at work, what I'm saying? It's like this is becoming more of a struggle,
yeah,
more of a struggle
yeah,
within the own home.
yeah.
And, the more I think about it, it's odd because I think I've told you this, but my grandfather, he passed away like literally arguing with my grandmother.
Mm,
Like he literally fell down, had a heart attack during an argument.
wow.
My father, he passed away on Valentine's Day, and this was like a day or two after having a big argument with his wife. Now, these type of things, I'm kind of correlating to, competition in the home,
Right.
and it seems like there's a struggle. And so you can relate to a struggle as
Yeah,
competition, right? Because why are we struggling against one another?
yeah.
Why
It's
is
like
there
a tug
such
of war.
yeah, it's like a tug of war for whatever reason. It could be just silly stuff most of the time. We're arguing over really stuff that both parties think that is really important, but when you break it
Mhm.
down and you look back on it, like, is it really worth the strife? And in
Right.
some cases, really your life. You know what I mean? Because the statistic you just gave in regards to suicide, I had looked up another statistic in the past, and it just seems like the men are dying off sooner than the women
Yeah.
in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. And we don't, you don't wish like death on any part,
Nah.
right, of that
Right.
family. But it's like, why is that happening like more and
Right.
more?
Right.
So yeah, that's a scary alarm right there as far as competition.
Yeah. It creates unwanted stress, and stress is the number one killer for a lot of people. But uh, the statistics don't lie, even more so for men. When
Yeah.
I was thinking about like criticism, I was thinking
Mhm.
about two words. There's criticism, and then there's constructive criticism.
Mhm.
Criticism, why are you doing that? What's this? What you wearing that for? How's that going to do anything? And then there's constructive criticism. Hey, let me give you a hand. This can make this better, or do whatever. Think about your thought process. Is what you're telling him trying to build him up
Mhm.
or tear him down? Basically, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, yeah. And criticism, like back to this article, it was just talking about how having a judge-free listen. A lot of times, and this is in, I'm sure, all relationships, but I know for me, sometimes I'm not really looking for an answer.
Yeah,
I just want to be able to like talk something
yeah,
out, you know
yeah.
what I mean, get my thoughts out without like,
Absolutely.
an absolute answer or
Yeah,
definitely not a rebuttal, like,
yeah.
or like any negative kind of
Free
like
of judgment. Yeah,
yeah. Yeah. So I think when there's judgment behind it, that kind of like derails a conversation, or even like if I just want to be heard,
right, right.
and in my marriage, we've come a long way in that area and gotten some help on that. But I remember when it was just so tough just to like, speak my mind, say
Right,
say what I
right,
needed to say without just like this constant rebuttal, or I
right,
felt like I
right,
was being judged on just either a decision I had already made, or even if it was something I was just thinking about doing.
right.
It was just like it would be kind of this different vibe of energy that it made me almost not want to even talk about it. You know what
Mm,
I'm saying? It caused like some reluctancy on, can I even bring this out without just being able to talk through something.
yeah, yeah. Man, that's something serious for me, is being able to express myself and being able to speak and not be judged by it. Like, that's important. Rather, if I'm at work, I don't care if I'm at the gym,
Yeah.
home, I have to be able to express myself, because when I don't, it's like I can literally feel it physically. Like, my blood pressure is a little higher. I get a little short tempered at things, and things
Yeah.
that wouldn't really bother me, but because I'm so just like kind of I'm like a volcano almost ready to
Mm.
explode because I'm not able to express myself. It hurts me just kind of in other areas of my life. But when I'm able
Yeah.
to tell people how I feel, and there's always a productive way to do that without cursing, without yelling. And a
Right.
lot of times I don't need the answers. I know what the answers are most
Right.
of the time. I just,
Right.
like you said earlier, I just want to be heard and just be able to express myself and not be
Right.
judged by what I'm saying.
Right, right. And that's again, on why we're having these conversations, and just like unfortunately the brother that sent in that information, and I had to throw that
Mm-hmm.
in the trash after reading it.
Man.
It's like, man, different levels of support, right?
Right.
And maybe why we're not experiencing them, whether it's intentional or not intentional. We just want to get the word out, like this really impacts us.
Right.
And as a man, we again, we stuff things. We feel
Yeah.
like it's not going to bother us. We can carry this for a minute, but at the end of the day, it's eating us inside, and we don't
Right.
always know how that's impacting us, right? Until, like you said, we might blow up, and people have different ways of blowing up. Some are more
Yeah.
unhealthier than others, right? But
Yeah. Yeah.
at the end of the day, it's like, what how can you protect your man, in a sense, is what we're trying to get to. And that's why we're
Mm.
trying to give you like our inner thoughts, our inner pains, our just
Yeah.
kind of our daily
Yeah.
chats and what we have as friends, because the odds are stacked against us as men.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In today's society, and I'm talking about real men. I'm talking about, you can paint that picture however you want to. I'm talking about
Yeah.
real men that are like doing their best, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying, to try to hold their families together, trying to keep jobs, right? Trying to keep food
Yeah.
on the table, and just trying to do the right things. Now, I ain't talking for all the other
Yeah.
situations that are out
Yeah.
there. I'm just talking
Yeah.
about, what a real man is.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's what we're talking about, because the odds are stacked,
Yeah.
against us.
Yeah, definitely it's stacked against us. Like for a man to be himself today, it's
Mm.
hard. And I'm talking about when you go to work, especially my job.
Yeah, yeah.
You always hear those terms about, they put down masculine guys,
Hmm.
and that's a whole nother conversation we can have at another time, but it's
Right.
hard to be yourself. You have to be somebody that, you're quiet and kind of timid and you can express yourself. And today's society has like that monkey is on a man's back, the knee is on his throat by society
Hmm.
because he can't be a man. But when he comes home and thinking about the letter you just wrote, like that woman is not really supporting him. By helping, she should be like with those kids, like, man, like there should be no change when the kids go with their biological mother to when they come home, there should be no change in love. And she
Right.
can't love that significant other if she doesn't love those kids. Like,
Mm.
there's no way around it. Yeah, there's problems, and that's how, I mean, a blended family is tough. It's not easy. It takes work. It's not easy, and you have to be willing to put the work in. And that
Yeah.
means communication. That means open communication and listening to the kids too. But the bottom line is supporting that woman and supporting that man. And if you can't love them, then how can you love your significant other?
Yeah, yeah. And that's, I mean, and just kind of, yeah, that definitely pause on that part. Like both parties in that scenario
Yeah,
need support. The man and the woman need support
yeah,
in that scenario. And from our perspective and the feedback that we get and just our inner circles and stuff, most of the men like are trying, you know what I
yeah,
mean, to like be there for their families, even if the family is broke in a sense or split up and they're trying to just at least be there for the kids. Maybe
yeah,
the relationship didn't work out, but they're at least trying to do the right thing for the kids. At least support that, because there's a lot of there are some lot of men that are not doing that, right?
yeah,
And we call them deadbeats. We know that,
yeah,
but there's a ton that just don't get credit
yeah,
for doing the right things and still
yeah,
trying to be there, even though they're getting like bashed, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Or presented as they're just trash, you know what I
yeah,
mean? Like
yeah,
that letter.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's not the case, for a
yeah.
lot of them. So, if you were to give any of the younger generation like some tips if they were going into kind of a blended scenario, like, what would you tell them like before they got married or just kind of going into it? Like, what should they look for or talk about first?
Man, good question. It's really basically you got to let time run its course with your relationship and not rush things. And it takes time. Rather, you're getting to know her kids or she's getting to know your kids. It takes time. Maybe that means instead of you and her going to whatever, maybe that means you take a day with the kids going to the beach or whatever. And then it takes time for that parent to spend individual time with that kid or with that children alone by themselves
Yeah,
to get to know them and
right.
get to know their personality, their likes, their dislikes, how they are, and to where that those kids are comfortable 100% with that parent. And
Yeah,
we make mistakes as men, and women make mistakes, and you learn from that. Long
yeah,
as you learn from it, you're in a growing process with that.
yeah,
And it's nothing wrong with like counseling. A lot of people, that's kind of like an ugly word. A lot of people don't like, counseling, having somebody tell you what to do. And it's not, if you look at it like that, you're going about it the wrong way. It's
yeah,
just somebody to give you a different outlook on life and on perspectives with things you're dealing with. But
yeah,
it's basically time. And
yeah,
the other person and you have to put the work in
yeah,
100%.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, 100%. Both have to want it, right? But
Yeah.
if you do choose counseling, both parties may not always be ready to go see a counselor, and that's the prerogative of each individual, right? But if you want change, you know what I mean, both people have to at least do the work
Yeah.
individually and collectively.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what I'm learning for myself. There's things I need to work on
Yeah.
specifically so that I can grow. I can be a
Yeah.
better husband, better father, and different things like that. And then there's things we got to come together on and get the help that we need so we can be the best for each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like you said, it's not about necessarily somebody telling you what to do.
Right.
If you're
Right.
if you're seeing a properly trained counselor,
Right. Right. Yeah.
because most of the time they're just going to listen to you and then give you some like tools on
Right.
how to help you, where you're at.
Yeah.
So I had wrote down a point that kind of ties this in, but I wrote down he don't need another mother,
Mm.
lawyer, or judge in his life. And those are things that come up that I know for me, that just make me cringe. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Like
Yeah.
like we are not trying to be with our mom, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like telling us what to do. We're not trying to be with the lawyer that has all the answers all the
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
all day, every day, all night. And, we just don't need a judge,
Mm-mm.
from our woman. We
Yeah.
don't need that. Like we want your input, we want your support, right? And I think that's the most important piece of, because we should be side by side, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? We should be like holding each other up. There's no one part that's like more important. But at the
Yeah.
end of the day, like for us, like support is critical.
It's priceless. Yeah. I was just
Priceless.
as you were talking about that, I was thinking how much when I was in my job in healthcare during COVID and what that was like, and how much I just couldn't wait just to express to the things that I was seeing and how I was feeling at the time. And being able to be vocal about that and expressive helped a lot with my stress, where I can go to work recharged. Because it was tough going in there every night and wearing all this stuff and people are
Yeah.
dying and you yourself don't know if you may catch something, because at that time we really didn't know, like, you were seeing people that were 100% healthy, no problems, and they were
Right.
taking L's. And so you're worrying about that and, worrying about your family being safe and, being able to come home and just talk about that. Once I had to leave my clothes at the door and I understood that because where I was coming from.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
coming in, I started thinking about that just as like it became just regular, just things I would do. Come home, leave my clothes at the door, and it was symbolic for me just to do that, just to leave that stress there and come in and recharge. And thinking about what you were talking about, that guy with that letter, I keep thinking about that. And I was thinking about all these kids we see with all these crazy things in the world. Like there was a mass shooting,
Yeah.
and a lot of kids come that are with these situations, or people who do it in general, a lot of them come from dysfunctional families.
Yeah.
And that doesn't matter if it's a traditional family or a blended family, both can be dysfunctional. But
Right.
dysfunctional families, a lot of them produce kids who do things like that. And then the whole world has to reap the results.
Mm.
Innocent people go down, because you had a dysfunctional family.
Yeah. 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 And that's a sad state,
Yeah.
like where we're at, as a society. And all we can do is really just try to help the next generation. You know what I
Yep.
mean? I mean, it really starts with our own, it starts with our own families as best as we can. It starts with us internally, trying to be that change that we
Yeah.
want. But I know for me, a lot of that is just not having the elders or the older generation to really rely on.
Yeah.
Like back in the day, we had, with our grandfathers, and just how things were back in the days, where you can go to like your elders and just get that advice and kind of talk through things and have those standards.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that's a big
That's
change.
important, man. And just going off of your grandmother and your grandfather, like I told you, mine used to fight too, man.
Yeah,
And some
yeah,
of them were just like, what? How did you guys fight over that? And then, sometimes they'd be funny because watching, older people fight, sometimes it'd be, a little comical, but
right.
mine, they used to do it too. And shoot, he might have been feeling frustrations like we do now as men, coming home tired and
Yeah,
got to get in an argument with the wife. It was almost seemed kind of routine, And
right.
but you're right, like not having any kind of elders, and I think a lot of them now, like their aspects on how they deal with things, like with their mental health, like they don't believe in that. They're not for
Yeah,
that. Like telling somebody else their business, I'm not with that. And,
that's
the
true.
old
Yeah,
school, they kind of stay away from that. But hey, you don't have all the answers.
true.
So I wish we can go to them, but it's unfortunate we don't have that. We have to kind of relearn, relearn things and develop our own tools to deal with our own problems because we couldn't get advice from it.
Yeah, yeah. I know one of the places, like I come on here, but this week I had went to the barber shop, right? And
Hmm.
just wanted to touch up on this part. And I had met the owner of the barber shop, and he had a bookshelf, like a bookcase in his barber shop, and it was just impressive because I never seen that like in a barber shop, which is a great place to talk, by the way, right?
Man,
Where
man.
man can just have like real conversations, just kick
Yeah,
it, music in the background.
yeah,
It's just a great feeling. I had missed that for a while, and when
yeah,
I got in there, I was like, oh, I missed this vibe.
yeah, yeah.
Anyway, we started chatting, and he was like, man, he had moved from Connecticut. He had remarried, been with his wife for now 8 years, but
Hmm.
remarried out of like a toxic relationship. And this book that he had wrote is called More Than a Barber. And he ain't paying me to plug him or anything like this, but so I just picked up his book. But man, he's all about helping the younger generation like heal
Mm.
from trauma, because he was saying that he had talked to so many clients, and then they ended up, like in his barbershop, like over the years, he would find out like they committed suicide, or they
Right,
was having
right.
like different issues. Part of his, like, I guess, personal ministry would just be able to have like conversations like with his clients that he was cutting their hair, trying to just make sure they were in a good spot. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
yeah,
and that really like that was a good, like, I guess, point this week
right.
for me, or just a good time that I had this week. Just talking to a dude I didn't know and just got a chance to meet. That was good
Yeah,
people.
yeah.
Uh,
There's when you think of trauma and the barber, what he was talking about, I start thinking, there's a lot of people, a lot of men who have like undiagnosed PTSD. And
mm,
you can get PTSD from a lot of things. It doesn't have to necessarily be related to you being a combat veteran or
yeah,
somebody that was in the military. You can
yep,
get PTSD real easily. And it all starts from stress and not being open and talking about problems and stuff like that. And
yep,
there was some sort of traumatic incident that triggered it. Doesn't
yeah,
have to be war or combat. It could have been an argument, a fight
hmm,
that triggered PTSD.
yep,
And that's what leads to people, relationships being toxic. Yeah, the barbershop, thinking about that. And we were growing up, that was kind of like our one avenue
yeah,
of like talking to elders,
yeah, yeah,
because those guys in there where we used to go get our hair cut at Magic Shears on Crenshaw. And
yeah,
those guys were all older guys. They weren't like no thugs or hooligans telling us to do the wrong thing. And sometimes we
right,
go in there and get a cut up, but we also get some advice on some
yeah,
good stuff.
yep,
We were always up in there, always hanging around that barbershop. Things have changed. I
yep.
wish we could still have that as much, but it was needed. We learned a lot from that place.
Yeah, the barbershop was almost like a church. I mean, because
Yeah, yeah,
think about it, they're pretty much like on every block.
yeah.
But this particular barbershop, we was growing up, it seemed like we were there like once a week, at least
Man,
every 2 weeks, especially with that special we had. You
yeah.
remember
I
that?
think we were there at least once a week, sometimes twice.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So, but imagine, like you said, we had a lot of great conversations. We saw a lot of cray stuff, a lot of,
yeah, yeah,
I mean, some celebs coming in there
yeah,
giving that,
yeah.
giving they
And
advice,
then
and
get kicked out. Yeah,
that
yeah,
they get kicked out.
yeah,
But yeah, man, it was just like a sense of community,
yeah,
and you would see like from the young little kids coming in, getting in
yeah,
fades and stuff, to the
yeah,
OGs, and
yeah,
it's just a fun community spot
yeah.
to talk about whatever, you
Yeah, and
know.
it was a place where men could be men, and you
Yep.
can be your man. You can be masculine and come in there, get your cut, talk about your issues, hear other people's issues, talk about sports. Start thinking about that. Like, what do we have like that? Some guys have barbershops like that. There are a few, some don't. There's some cigar lounges where you can go and
Yeah.
kind of something similar to that.
Yeah.
But go to a place where you could be yourself, man. That's priceless.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, when you was talking real quick, I didn't want to forget this point because you had brought up, this whole thing about masculinity
Mhm.
and being yourself. And, there's a lot of like conversation around how we need to be more sensitive,
Right.
right? Man, you got to be more sensitive. You got to be more sensitive. And that's kind of a double-edged sword. I mean,
Hmm.
that's kind of because at the end of the day, like, your man was created a certain way. Like, we're
Yeah.
created to protect. You know what I'm saying? We're
Mm.
created to work. You know what I mean? So there's like a balance between the level of sensitivity you want. Like I don't get me wrong. Like we should definitely be sensitive to feelings and kind of watch the things that we say.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I feel like it's kind of over like
Yeah.
pushed where men
Yeah.
need to be like more sensitive. And then if in that sense you're pushing them to be soft, like you're
Yeah.
pushing them to a level that is not really
Yeah.
masculine. So
Yeah.
what's your thoughts on that?
Man, that's how you create a boy, basically, is what you just said. A boy, not a man. That
Yeah,
recipe right there,
it's a
you just created
disaster.
a boy. And then, but that's what you'll have in a relationship. That's what you'll have as a father will be a boy. That's what you'll have in society. That guy
Right.
going to work is a little boy.
Yeah.
And he'd be hyper emotional. If he
Yeah.
gets pulled over by the police, that's an incident. If he has to
Mm.
communicate something to anybody, if anybody offends him, he doesn't know how to talk about problems or anything because he's a boy. He hasn't grown to be a man. But society has brought a lot of men back down to that, to little boys and not men.
Yeah.
That's a big
Yeah.
problem in our society.
Yeah, so this is just a little message to all the ladies out there. Like, just be careful what you ask for. I'm not saying that the man should be a jerk. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
just
yeah,
say like talk any type of way to you or be with disrespectful or belittling. I'm just saying, just be careful for what you're asking for. If you want, you just keep hounding your man. And you want him to be more sensitive. Well, we're not really created to. There's a certain level of sensitivity that
yeah,
God has put into us, but there's also a level you don't want as
yeah,
well. Because if somebody's trying to break in the house, you don't want him to be that sensitive. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
Somebody's
You don't
trying
want
to
him curled up under the sheets. You know what I'm saying? You want him to go deal with the threat. And we're going to
right,
talk about that on another show.
right,
But, we were talking about this and we're not trying to offend anybody from a certain group. And
yeah, yeah,
just to give those people some clarity on what we're saying,
yeah,
the kind of man we're talking about, the kind of man we are, we're not worried about what you are. Like, you have the right to be that. It's not my place to judge you. It's not my place to say what you should be doing as a man. Because a real confident man is not concerned what another man is doing,
yeah,
period, or doing in
exactly,
his bed or he's doing with somebody else. That's not our place to judge. That's you do you, respect me, and I'll respect you. That's all a real man wants is respect.
yeah,
And what a lot of people don't know, trying to make us sensitive, hey, you respect us, we'll respect you and support you. You live your life, I'll do mine, but I will respect you, but you have to give it to me.
yeah, yeah, yep. And that's what it is.
Yep.
That's what it is, man. So I know this is a topic we probably could talk, hours on. You got any other kind of points you wanted to lay out before we kind of wrapped up?
Man, what does support look like to you coming from a man perspective? What is a way that, hey, what should most men look for from their significant other support wise? What does that look like?
I think we kind of tapped in a little bit, but support, from my perspective, is listening,
Mm,
to his perspective, not competing with your man. If he has an idea, support it. If he brings up, it doesn't mean you agree with everything, right? Of course, he wants your honest opinion, but support what he believes is the best thing or the right thing, to do. State what you may feel is important and let him weigh that out. You know what
yeah.
I mean? But let him make his decisions through supporting him. Support what he loves. You know what I mean? If
Mm,
it's not like if it's not offensive, if it's not like if he has a hobby or something that he wants to pursue, if it's not like against the law, if it's not
yeah.
impacting you negatively,
Yeah.
support it.
Yeah.
He needs an outlet. If he has kids, support his kids. If he
Yeah.
if he has decisions on what he's trying to maybe teach
Yeah.
the kid or maybe discipline the kid,
Yeah.
like support that. I mean,
Yeah.
we're hearing a lot of scenarios where there's back and forth over how to raise the kids and stuff like that, and a lot of that is just let the man say his piece to what
Yeah.
he needs to say, and you as the mom, you say what you need to say, and there's a balance in that, right?
Yeah.
But
100%.
support like what the father is saying to the child. Again, if
Yeah.
it's not like against the law or abusive or something like that,
Right.
then there's no reason why there shouldn't be support.
Yeah.
So those are
Yeah.
those are things like again I mentioned like Like, I'm not looking for a mom. I'm not looking for no lawyer, and I'm not looking for no judge. Like, so
Yeah.
to me, support is that.
Man, what you just said was just like, hope a lot of people, if there's women listening, like what you just said is how you create a happy man in your relationship, or
Mm,
husband or boyfriend. That's how you create that person to be happy in that relationship with those things you just talked about. Hey, you're a man, I'm a man. We think like, man, a lot of men, we think alike. We may have different likes, little things, but we
yep.
think going in the same direction. And those things, man, is what makes a man happy and will ultimately make his home happy.
Yeah. Yeah. So hopefully we've helped somebody,
Yep.
I really hope.
Man,
I
we
hope
got
we help.
something else in that trash can. I know we got a lot of things. We be getting a lot of letters, and they top secret, they anonymous. We ain't gonna read your name, but we gonna read it. And like I said, if we got to, man, I'm sending in the seals for some of this stuff. Like that dude right there. Yeah, we got to go help him.
Yeah. Yeah. So please just keep them coming.
Yeah,
I know we try to have fun with some of this stuff, but to be honest, these scenarios are really sad. They're
yeah,
heartbreaking. And a lot of them are stress causing and can cost a man his life, depending on how
yep.
far that PTSD, that stress level, that heart might not be able to take a lot of stuff. So if we
Mm,
can put out anything, just please take this seriously. Men or I should say women, we really need your support.
absolutely.
And men, try to chat it up as best as you can.
Yep. All right.
All
Peace
right.
out.
See you next time.